welcome to Surviving Divorce at 3 a.m. I'm Christy Bridges, and with me is a friend of mine named Karen Iverson. Now, Karen is a counselor, and she's here to help us with something we're all going to go through. If you haven't already noticed, there's a lot of grief attached to divorce, but it's not your average kind of grief. When someone passes away, it's not usually by choice. It's not usually a rejection or a breaking of a vow. And they're not usually still around where you have to deal with them with your kids or splitting up your friends or, finances. So there's a very different type of grief that goes along with divorce, but it's still a process. So, Karen, thank you so much for being here today. Can you tell us a little bit about what we can expect?
Sure. Christy, thank you so much for having me. Really, there is a lot that is different and a lot that is similar to grief when you have a loved one pass and when you have a divorce.
Mhm.
One of the main things, though, that is different about them is, of course, the fact that your ex spouse is still going to be around.
Mm,
And with a death of a loved one, it's terminal. That's it, the end, in essence, unfortunately. But with a divorce, you have the lingering presence of that other person. So whether you're in an amenable relationship or you're not on good terms, you still have to interact with that person in a lot of cases. So there's no termination to it. And you can't just say, well, the person is no longer here. You have to say that they continue and our interactions may continue. So there's no end to it.
and sometimes there's confusion with it. I know that um, for me and for one of our authors in the 3 a.m. book, there was a lot of uncertainty. Should I still try to work it out with this person? Do I still, aren't we really supposed to be together? Maybe, this is fixable. Even when they're, 1,000 miles away, there's still the possibility and there's still even when it doesn't seem possible, there's still a temptation to track them online, to talk to your friends and see what they're up to, to try to explain yourself one more time or vent at them your emotions, which is not productive necessarily. So there's a
Definitely.
lot of temptation and confusion, I think, that comes with that. How do you deal with it?
Yes. Well, there is a lot because you're going through the grief stages. They're the same grief stages as if the person had passed. They're just seen from a little bit of a different perspective. So you still have denial at the beginning where you say, well, how did this happen? This didn't really happen. And, maybe this is going to turn around and we're going to get back together again. And you just go through all these questions, and then you get to the anger stage where you're like,
Mm,
I'm so upset and I can't believe this happened to me. And you just are mad and you might even be hostile towards the other person. You might be angry at yourself. You might be angry at the person that your ex is now with.
mm,
You might be angry at somebody that you interacted with who gave you what you thought was ill advice. And then, after you pass through that anger stage, you get to the bargaining stage. And that can be very affected by divorce, where you say, well, maybe if I were to do this, then my spouse will come back to me, or maybe if I hadn't worked my life in this pattern, then this wouldn't have happened. So you bring it upon yourself and give guilt on yourself. And there's just a lot of confusion definitely that goes on in the whole process. And then you get to the depression phase, after the bargaining phase, where you just want to stay in bed, or you want to eat lots of ice cream, or you don't want to eat anything at all.
Mhm.
And you just feel depressed, and there's this heaviness upon you, and you're like, where did this come from? I'm not a depressed person, but here I'm feeling this. And the depression is actually a natural feeling. It's a natural process that we go through. The whole grief process is a healing process in general. And then you get to acceptance, which is not really saying, okay, well, I'm okay with this. It's really more of acknowledging the fact that this happened, and now there's this new normal, which is unfortunately in a lot of the cases now my permanent reality now.
Wow. And and the depression phase, let's go back to that for a second,
Mhm.
because when you have the anger, right? There's an energy that comes with that. And we try sometimes, I think, to stay in anger because we don't want that abyss that the depression is, where we're just listless and unmotivated and we feel powerless about life. But so we try to stay in anger sometimes because it fires us up,
Mhm.
because something about holding on to our rightness, our rightness and their wrongness, or finding someone to blame, feels more powerful. It's not, and it can erode our lives. It can erode our other relationships. It can push people away, and it can keep us from dealing with the things we need to deal with.
Yes.
But that depression that comes once we let go of the anger, inevitably it's going to come at some point, and it doesn't have to stay, right? My grandma used to say, it came to pass, it didn't come to stay. And each one of these, they come to pass, and they don't have to stay.
Mhm.
But when we get into that, a lot of our speakers and a lot of our authors have recommended that someone who's recovering from divorce take some time to just be single, to
Mhm.
just be, make some space for just them and God, and to learn to live with themselves. But doesn't that make the loneliness worse? How do we make it through, being single and having just me and God, when human beings are pack animals? We want to be with the pack. We get energized by having someone around. How can we do that?
Well, you're totally right. First of all, anger is in a lot of ways seen as a strength, because there's a connection between the person or the thing that you are angry with or angry at.
Mhm.
So there's this bridge to be crossed. And when you get past the anger and the bargaining stage, that's when you hit this moment where, okay, this is a reality now. And that's where the depression then comes in, because you're saying, okay, you know what, this isn't going to go away. This is a divorce. This is a situation that has come, and now I have to face it. And so that's when you then hit this low and the depression starts to sink in. But the thing is that you really need to develop your self confidence and become you, which is what the other counselors and other people have been mentioning. Because, you have to be strong in yourself. And in order to do that, you need to know yourself. So you need to take time to really develop who you are and go back to the roots of before you were married, even when you were just on your own and you were single. And that self confidence can be done, can be developed by doing things like journaling, positive self talk. It can be setting realistic boundaries. It can be stopping comparing yourself with other people, in enriching, the things that you enjoy doing on your own, what makes you tick as an individual. And it's really important actually to not jump right into another relationship, because we're in a vulnerable state when we're at that point. And it's not the best place to be making lifelong changing decisions, because we might make mistakes because we're vulnerable at that time.
Yeah. And one thing that I have learned, now I jumped right in to another relationship. I had gone from, you know, living with family as a teenager to being married, and then I jumped right into another relationship afterwards. But I had to learn the hard way, about myself and my own rhythms. Whereas this having this space, and I've seen it done. I've seen lots of people that I know because I don't know, there's something in me that really respects that. I've watched them live that way, where they've taken the time to understand themselves and be alone. But one thing I've noticed is it is energizing to be around people, and at the same time, you can stay strong and be single. So when you say, I am going to get out there and try some things that I haven't gotten to try before, or that I haven't done in a long time because I lived my life around this other person. I'm
Mhm.
going to get out there and try those things with other people. Or maybe there's nothing new I particularly want to try, but I want to develop myself somehow. And so I'm going to write a book, but I'm going to get into a writing group so that I'm doing it with other people, because if I make a plan to do it and then I come home from work, I end up just sitting on the couch watching TV, right? In that depression state. And so instead, I'm going to do this with other people. So getting into groups of people who have a similar interest, and then choosing to go home and spend time alone or with you and God and review what you've done, and building your own memories of your own life, and still getting that socialization can really make a difference, it seems.
Definitely. And just by saying that it's good to take space in between marriages, so to speak,
Mhm.
it doesn't necessarily mean to isolate yourself,
Ooh.
because, like you just mentioned, learning to develop things that you have interests in can definitely be done in a group setting. For example, if you used to like to walk, or you used to like to hike, you can join a meetup and go to a hiking group, and then your community is the people that you're hiking with, but you're still single as an individual. And when you go home, yes, it's a great idea to reflect on your experiences and how it made you feel, and who you're becoming, can develop into, who you become.
And then you can totally make better choices about the people you're going to be around, because
Hmm.
you're around people who have similar interests to you. You can see things from a different perspective than you would if you're just looking for a date. So, Karen, you talked about the stages of grief, and you've got the denial, right? Maybe this is going to work out. Maybe I just need to try harder, or I can't believe this happened.
Hmm.
And then you've got the anger,
Anger.
right? Oh my gosh, somebody to blame, please, right? And then you have the depression,
Bargaining.
and the bargaining and the
Hmm.
depression. And so that's four.
And the last is acceptance.
Acceptance. Gotcha. So do these happen in order? Can I go, oh, I've been through the anger stage. I'm happy now. Okay, so I'm past that. Is that?
Well, unfortunately, no, it's not a linear process. It's not a
Oh,
linear process if you're grieving a loved one that has passed, or if you're grieving a loved one that you are getting a divorce from or have divorced. You can go from one stage into the next. You can go back to the previous stage. You can jump ahead stages. It doesn't go linearly, and it's just a process that's individualized for each individual.
mm.
Everybody's grief process, everybody's divorce process is different, just as we individuals are individuals. Nobody's is the same.
So what would you say? We've got about a minute left. if you could just offer a little bit of encouragement to people who are feeling like this grief process keeps going back and forth, and they keep being surprised by, returning to emotions they thought they were finally done with. Uh, what kind of encouragement can you give them?
Well, I think the main thing is just to remember that this is a process. So life is a process. Processes are messy, and messy we can learn from and be taught from.
Yeah.
So it will end. That's the main thing, that, this grief process will come to an end and you will get through it. It's just a matter of actually feeling it, experiencing it, and walking through it so that you can get through each of the stages that you need to get through.
Oh,
And I have a website which is called KarenEIverson.com/mental health. And I have visualizations on there that you can do to help reduce depression and anxiety.
wonderful. So Karen, do that again. Karen.
Sure. It's KarenEIverson.com/mental health.
Perfect. And so there are visualizations they could go to right away
Mhm.
to help get through this.
Yeah.
Feel your feels, guys. They're gonna come out one way or another. So you may as well just honor them and ride them out, and know that it's not forever. Not forever.
It's not.
Karen, thank you so much for helping us with this.
Thank
God
you so
bless
much.
you.
Yeah,
We'll
thank
see
you
you
for
guys
having me.
soon.